we have to know where we are now. All right. When it comes to Donald Trump or Republicans, there is no rule of law. Don't kid yourself. The only way that you can have a rule of law is for it to be enforced. So you would need a Justice Department to say this is illegal. Well, you're never going to have that. You would need a Supreme Court that actually cares about the rule of law.
Hey, James, each week we talk about Trump's excesses and lawlessness, but we talk about the particulars and we understate sometimes the overall picture. He is currently sending troops into American cities under the guise of fighting crime while cutting law enforcement assistance, seeking to control the Federal Reserve Board, which has for 100 years been independent, with specious charges against the woman on the board. He's using mortgage reviews as a weapon to go after Trump's enemies, look for tax returns to be next. He's trying to rig the elections. He has a Justice Department that's a puppet for the president, venomous attacks on the courts that dare defy him, going after the media, law firm, and universities, taking control of the military, firing the best officers, and politicizing West Point and Annapolis. And as historian Sean Wilentz told our colleague Tom Ensel, Trump also is building a, quote, international crime and corruption syndicate. One of the smartest and most serious men that I know, who served in high positions in both Democratic and Republican administrations, offers a frightening parallel. Quote, this looks like Germany, 1935, end quote. James, I think that's the case, and I think there is an existential threat right now, and anyone who doesn't treat it that way is making a colossal mistake.
Well, of course, what you said, Albert, is very alarming. I have more alarming news. It is only going to get worse. Understand that. This is a moving bow. This man is surrounded. The walls are closing in on him. It's evident that there's something physically, I don't know, not right. They keep trying to hide it. He had a literally breakdown in a 3-hour and 16-minute cabinet meeting, if you want to call it that. And he's going to continue to get worse. He's going to try to send troops to Chicago, and he's going to do things that we cannot imagine. And I'm not being a Cassandra here at all. And what we have to do every week on this show is alert people to it, and somebody's going to have to come up with some kind of way to push this back, because it is just getting started. However bad he is today, he's going to do nothing but get significantly worse. And his mental breakdown, we're watching it unfold right in front of us.
Yeah. James, it is absolutely frightening. Let me just take one example here. This is the mortgage fraud allegations, which are just allegations and may not be relevant. But what's really alarming here, and I would encourage everybody out there to try to go get a piece that a Georgetown law professor, Adam Levitin, wrote about Bill Pulte, who is the head of the housing administration, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, a Trump hack, his enemies list. What Pulte is doing is going and pulling out mortgages that may have transpired years ago of Trump's enemies, or people Trump wants to get rid of, to try to find something. That is absolutely outrageous. I think it might even be illegal. And I think, as Levitin says, it should be a fireable offense, or he should resign. Now, I think the fight with the Fed is incredibly important. I mean, James, I remember when Alan Greenspan went to Little Rock in December of 1992, and he didn't know Clinton really, and he came back and he told me, he said, he's really smart. I'm not surprised by that. You know, he knows more than average about economics. I'm not surprised about that. What's surprising was he really understood the importance of the independence of the Federal Reserve System in our economy, whether you always agree with it or not. They make mistakes. But if the Federal Reserve is controlled by a president like Trump, it's going to be a disaster for the economy. It was last tried, not to this extent, by Nixon in 1992, and the results were catastrophic. And what Trump is trying to do here now is something I have no idea why these Wall Street titans. I know they love their tax cuts and they hope the market will go up, but this is undercutting the rule of law. It's undercutting the independence of an important institution, and I haven't heard much at all from them.
If we're going, we have to know where we are now. All right. When it comes to Donald Trump or Republicans, there is no rule of law. Don't kid yourself.
Yep.
The only way that you can have a rule of law is for it to be enforced. So you would need a Justice Department to say this is illegal. Well, you're never going to have that. You would need a Supreme Court that actually cares about the rule of law. You do not have that, people. The Supreme Court is an adjunct of the Executive Committee of the Republican Party of Northern Alabama. So there is no, when it comes to Trump, they've already said the law doesn't apply to him. And it comes to anything else, you live in a lawless country. Now, does that mean that your sorry ass better follow the law, because they'll throw you under the jail? However, if you're with Trump, we live in a lawless country. We don't have a Department of Justice that enforce these laws, and we don't have a Supreme Court that would allow these laws to be enforced. You have to understand that. The entire experiment that we started is in jeopardy. It's on the ropes. We have no law. We have no enforcement. We have no court system at the Supreme Court level, period.
Yeah, there actually is, I think, some very good judges at the appellate court, and particularly, federal district judges. This week, a couple of them, Trump appointees. There's one in Virginia, I think his name is Judge Cullen, looked at the question of Trump trying to get rid of all the judges in Maryland, or at least, just make sure they can't render any decisions. And Cullen issued a blistering opinion on what a unconscionable, unconstitutional attack this was. But then it goes up to the Supreme Court, which says, I'm sorry, you can't interfere with Mr. Trump. If all those decisions giving him the right to do all sorts of things, if Joe Biden had been the president and asked for the same thing, do you think there's any way those Republicans would have voted for it? Absolutely not.
Sure, they're superb jurists at the district court level, at the Court of Appeals. They're superb state court judges and appellate judges and Supreme Court judges around this country. Some of them are not Democrats. I'm a big person. The Supreme Court is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Okay? And I'm talking about like Brett Kavanaugh, who was the greatest leaker there was during the Ken Starr stuff. People forget, because we don't want to remember Ken Starr, that Brett Kavanaugh was his butt boy. All right, we don't even want to talk about the ethics of the Clarence Thomas. We don't talk about Gorsuch, who just happened to have a seat on an airplane to go to, was it Alito? I guess it was Alito that went on a high-end fishing trip because G5 had an extra seat.
You know something? Hey, James, it was a Friday afternoon, and they looked around and they said, hey, we got an extra seat. Anybody want it? And somebody said, check with Sam. Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. Sam, they might have. I mean, it's so tragic. It's so, how do we get through it with this court? I don't know. I just don't know, but I do know that anybody that we don't have a Justice Department that will enforce the law. We have a Supreme Court that could give a shit what the law says. And yeah, we got some dedicated, FBI agents, and they're probably most of them been fired or curtailed of investigating something that Harry Truman did, or God knows what. So the nation is in distress. It's extreme distress, and all I can think of is we got to hoist the Jolly Roger and set sail.
No, I think that's right. And this law and order president, you alluded to this, they have gone and they took all of those criminals who staged an insurrection at the Capitol, beat up and even killed some police officers. It's there. I mean, it's not a case of, they're accused that you can see it. And they pardon every one of them, and showing total contempt for those police officers who tried to defend the country and the Congress from that mob. But they claim they're a law and order president. In Washington, I know. Look, crime is coming down. It's too high, and in places you need more police. You don't need National Guard. You don't need military who are not trained for this, and you don't need Park Service patrols. But this guy doesn't care. All he cares about is demagoguing an issue and claiming that he is the savior, and and he gets away with it.
All right. So let's talk 1 minute about crime messaging in the Democratic Party.
Right.
Remind everybody in the spring of 2021, I urge the Democrats to own this issue. The crime rate in 2024, the last year of the Biden presidency, was, I think, the lowest it's been this century. So he takes it up and he says that. And of course, the answer is the advice is 100%. Look, crime's an issue. Democrats are not very strong on that. You need to write this way. Well, what happened when we passed the crime bill in the early 90s? Joe Biden and Bill Clinton, with the largest drop in violent crime in the history of the United States. By the way, we didn't have assault weapons from 1994 to 2004. And under the last year, Biden, crime was at an all-time low. The approach I would suggest is some of these policies are working. Let's look at them and let's double down on what's working, and let's forget about what's not working. And remember, a big part of the 94 crime bill was funds for 100,000 more policemen. I cannot tell you the number of mayors that I ran into that say that's the biggest thing we could get. We could hire more cops. And we're going to do that. But I'm just saying, Albert, from the start of it, we're doing some things that are working. How do we make them work better? Why do we want to go back to the crime rate we had in the whoever, some Republican administration? Let's build on the success we're starting to see. That's just the way that I would approach it. And of course, they could have highlighted it, and Harris could have highlighted it early in her term as vice president. And I know for a fact, they said, well, we just can't do that. Okay, well, you didn't do it, and look where we are in the goddamn ditch.
Yep. Same with immigration. Same exactly.
Right.
There was a consensus on immigration, and the consensus was we will have a tough border, we will have a tight border, and we will try to create a pathway to citizenship to people who are here. Most Americans supported that. Most members of Congress supported that, and it was blocked by right-wing Republicans. And then the Biden administration threw it away with the border. It's tragic. James, we try to close our chit chat most weeks looking at Trump's promise that he would lick inflation on day one. Remember? I mean, he was going to the cost of living from day one. So today, let's take one commodity, coffee. Coffee is up by double digits since Trump took office. Now, that's due in part to the weather and supply chain issues, but it's also due to his stupid 50% tariff on Brazil because they aren't being nice to the thuggish former president who is a Trump pal. So you coffee drinkers in the morning, I would guess that's most of you, and some of you may go to Starbucks or other places. Your cost is going up, and you can thank Donald Trump for that.
So I want to put in, I've talked to a couple of Democratic consultants to talk about the hamburger. Well, everybody loves hamburgers, okay? Talk about what's happened to the cost of ground beef, what's happened to the cost of lettuce. But we're just typical people here, okay? We like lettuce, tomato, onion, pickle. In the South we put mayo on it, but it doesn't matter. And just break down, this is what the cost in that hamburger was on June the 20th of the year 2025. This is the cost of that hamburger on September 20th, 2025. Reduce it to the most simple thing that you can. So, well, maybe you can go meatless. Well, goddamn, the produce is still too exciting. But maybe you can do this. That's the choice you do. And by the way, wouldn't it tell you, well, if you can't afford steak, eat a hamburger. Well, hamburger's now $6 a pound. But no one's even trying to eat a T-bone now or slice of tomato. Are you kidding me? Our grandchildren will be asking about what does a tomato look like.
James, I don't understand it, because I really thought that on January 21st, we'll give him a day, that right after he ended the war in Ukraine, remember that was going to happen on day one too, Trump was going to go and end the cost of living problem. I mean, am I misremembering that? Is that just a figment of my imagination?
You're not misremembering it. Tell you a good way to sneak the cost of living into everyday messaging. Of course, we and a lot of people that are part of the commentary tend to be more fluent, and but we're covering the hell out of this redistricting because it's unprecedented as everything. And of course, the Newsom is 100% right. California's got to do something. But what we need to say is we would prefer to be talking about how to help people deal with the cost of living. We're only doing this not because we want to, but because for the first time in American history, a president in mid-decade is saying we have to do this. The public doesn't much like it. I agree. But the reason that we really didn't want to do this is we would like to focus our attention on families and how we can help them deal with the cost of living. But our opponents won't allow us to do that. They want to shut this down, which is idiotic, terrible public policy that we don't want to do, but we have to do it. But what we really want to do is help people deal with the cost of living.
Yeah.
Just shift it. Everything. Shift it. Pivot, hit. Hit them on the cost of living. When they bring up redistricting, we'd rather not be doing this. Okay, but they give us no choice. This is what they do all day, every day, is figuring out how to hold on to power as long as they possibly can. And every day you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay for the basic necessities in life. Frame the fucking issue.
Yeah. Amen. Because it is there, and people all over the country are feeling it every.
Oh, by the way, Albert, wasn't he going to get prices down on day one?
Oh yeah, that's what he was going to do. That's well, I'm not sure which came first on day one: ending the war in Ukraine or solving the cost of living problem. I'm not quite sure what the order was, but at a minimum, ending any cost of living problems was number 2 on day one, and I guess we're now day 220.
Look, if God created the earth and the universe in 6 days, it looks like you could probably do something about cost of living in the 6 months you've been in. But
well, if you listen to that 3-hour cabinet meeting the other day, God has a rival. I mean,
how much that cabinet meeting was about people? How much of that cabinet meeting talked about cost of living?
Yeah.
How much of that cabinet meeting talked about how to counter Russian criminality in Ukraine? How much of that cabinet meeting talked about the gun violence we have in this country? I'm just watching the break on the TV in the distance. Some asshole in Minneapolis shot up a Catholic school.
James, I had to take a break for a couple minutes during that, and I guess I just missed the cabinet discussion of Medicaid and healthcare cost. Because it just, and I'm sure that J.D. Vance or Bobby Kennedy or something, they must have brought that up, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm sure that some suck-ass cabinet member said, sir, with your powers and your brilliance and the brilliance of the people in this room, I am certain, sir, that we can start getting these prices down and help people deal with it. No, I didn't hear that.
Well, I didn't watch it. I didn't watch them all, and the contest was really intense.
I don't think this Republican town hall, meet the voter thing that we're going through, I don't think these people are gonna be able to go out in public. I don't I think there's huge number of them that are just not gonna go out to dinner because I think there's a pissed offness in this country, and it is just not coming from lefties as much as they want you to believe that. I think it's organic, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit more later in the show.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right.